is the height. And if you are too low and your feet are resting on the ground and your knees are sticking up, then guess what's in the way of your work? Your own knees or legs. So you always want to watch when the knife is done cutting the wood. If it keeps going, it doesn't matter to me whether it's my hand that's in danger or my leg that's in danger. I want to make sure that none of me is going to be bleeding when I'm doing my carving. Okay, so here's an important thing to think about. All right, when you are carving, you'll notice that wood has grain, right? It has fibers that run the length of the tree. And when you cut a piece of wood, it is much, much easier to cut down off the end of the grain than it is to try to cut into the grain, okay? That's because the little fibers will catch the knife and the piece of wood will more likely split than carve. So I want to go down off the step, and that will be much easier to do than trying to cut onto the step. I won't get a smooth cut. I'll get little, the fibers will run and then they'll snap off, and I'll get jagged, poor work. So I always want to cut off the end of the end grain. If you can see the grain on that, that'll help. You'll get much better work done. Okay. Second thing, the carving strokes that you use are real important. And what you're doing when you're carving is you're using your muscles to do two things: power and control. Power just means if I put a sharp thing somewhere and I push, then the sharp thing will cut through. But depending on what I'm cutting, I might not want to just cut the little piece all the way off. I might want to make a notch, or I might want to make a curly shaving, or I might want to do any number of neat control things. So we want strokes that give us lots of power in case we need it. We want strokes that give us lots of control in case we need that. So there are strokes that give you both. And I'll show you 6 knife strokes that will allow you to pretty much do anything you want to do with a piece of wood. Make a spoon, carve a fuzz stick for fire making, make tools, utensils, chopsticks, tent stakes, whatever it is you might want to make with wood. Carve a walking stick, carve a Canada goose, whatever it is you're going to carve. Okay, so first one is a stroke you could call a push away. And that's real intuitive. I want to put the knife on the wood, and I want to push away from myself into safe, empty air, right? So I can do that. Lots of power. It has lots of power. Now, our bodies are set up with sets of muscles that push things away from us and some that pull things towards us. And you use a whole set of them. Like when you're doing a push-up, you're using your triceps and your pectorals, so there's a set that work together in the direction you want to go. So this one is all pushing away. Now, if you push something away from yourself, once it goes away from you, you don't have to worry about it anymore, right? So we have pretty poor fine-tuning for pushing. But we have to be careful with things that we bring towards ourselves because we don't want to hit ourselves with them. So the strokes, there actually is a stroke where you do cut towards yourself and it gives you really good control. We just have to know how to do that safely, and I'll show you that in a little bit. So first of all, if all I want to do is make the end pointy, let's say it's a tent stake or a skewer for shish kebab or whatever it is I'm doing, if I just want the end of a stick pointy, I can just push away, carve off what I don't want, and the pieces go away. So there I go. The biggest safety problem I see with this stroke, especially with kids, is you get enthusiastic and you put the knife back on the wood faster and you don't pay attention. The reason that's a problem is because you tend to choke up And what will you eventually hit? Your thumb. So here's the rule. Always put the knife on the wood and take a moment to make sure, yes, that's where I want it. Then push. Okay? Don't push while the knife is in the air. Put it on the wood and then begin to push. And you'll get better cutting if you slide the knife. You see how the knife is going sideways? Slide the knife sideways as you push forward, and you'll get a smooth slice. Okay, so that's a good cut. Pushing away. You get lots of power, take off wood, make things pointy, or just take the bark off a stick. That's a good training exercise for little kids. If you want to teach them how to carve, just say, we're going to make something with this stick. Let's carve all the bark off. And they will work. And they'll also learn how to control the angle that you're holding the knife against the wood. If you hold it shallow, you'll skim under and take a long, nice, smooth shaving. Okay? Good for removing bark, if you just want the bark off. If you raise the angle of the knife, it will bite in and it will cut more deeply. You'll take off more wood, but it'll tend to be hard to do. So you might not want that. So the angle that you're holding the knife has another bearing. Knives have edge angles. I don't know if you can see this very well, but it's the edge that's ground onto the knife, and the two faces meet each other at an angle. Okay? If the rest of the knife is flat, as this one is, flat here, and then angled here, then there's this little shoulder right in between the two. And if you lean down flat enough to bump the shoulder against the wood, then the knife edge leaves the wood and whoops. So that could be dangerous and that can be sloppy carving. So you always want to be careful of the angle you're holding the knife on the wood. So, second of all, get a good grip. Make sure you're really holding it. Okay. Now, here's a challenge. You might want to do this if you're working with kids and you want to, impress upon them the need for control sometimes. And that is tell them to carve off a shaving and don't detach it from the wood. Okay? What would that look like? That would look like carving, 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 and there it is. It's a shaving and it's still attached to the stick, right? And there's another one. And there's another one. What's the practical use for this? It makes the stick more flammable if you try to light it on fire. Because if you're making a campfire, sometimes there's nothing little that's dry enough to burn. No fine textured grass stalks or little twigs or whatever. So you might have to take a bigger stick and split it open and whittle fine shavings, and you could light these with a match if the wood is dry. So you can make match flammable tinder with just a larger stick and your knife. So that's useful. But a lot of people will find it very hard not to accidentally cut all the shavings off. So here's this next cutting stroke. Okay. Put the knife on the wood. Take the thumb that's on the wood. Okay, imagine this. Hold the wood, slide the thumb forward and back. That's your pusher. That's your power. Okay, put the knife in front of it and push the knife with that same thumb. And you will be able to make really nice, neat, curly shavings. And you can stop carving before you accidentally detach the shaving very easily. All you have to do is take the power away from the thumb. If the thumb doesn't push, the cut stops immediately. It's very, very precise and pretty comfortable to do. If you do a lot of it, you're going to get a callus on your thumb, but that's okay. So, yes, make them curly, make them as long as you can. You can make that cut a little longer if you make the cut and then you you use the thumb as a fulcrum for a lever, and you can slide the knife a little further and make the shaving longer. So that helps. So that's what we call the thumb assist cut. It has great control and plenty of power. You can really push this through some wood and really make good shavings. It's a stroke I use a lot when I'm making spoons or carving wood into shapes I want. Real careful work. Okay. So the next cut, what if you have a square end and you want to make it rounded? See, this one's flat on one side, angled on the other side. What if I wanted to make the whole thing rounded? I could take square corners and trim off all the square corners and leave myself facets, and then I can go and trim those. How would I do that? Okay. This, obviously, if I put my thumb out and I bring the knife straight towards my thumb, I could cut my thumb. But what if I held my thumb not in front of the knife, but I could push the piece of wood and I could use the knife? So we are going to turn the blade so that it will cut towards the thumb, but above it. And this way we can work our way along square corners, facets, angles, and it's great for putting a rounded end and what we call chamfering. Chamfering means to take the rough square edge off of something by cutting off the angle that it's on. And you get pretty good power. And this is a stroke a lot of people use when they're peeling fruit. So I call it the apple peeling stroke. All right. So think about putting your thumb on the apple and carefully slicing the skin off the apple. Okay. So again, my thumb is not in front of the knife. It is on the wood, and the knife is, I'm just using my ability to squeeze my hand closed to help the knife move. So that works great. That's the apple peeling cut. All right. So remember I said there's a way to cut towards yourself? This is how you would do that. Okay. I can cut towards myself if I know I can't get all the way to my skin. How would I know that? Well, here's one. I can take my arm and I can bring it towards myself, and I can keep going, and before my hand actually gets all the way to me, I have run out of arm movement. I can't get my hand any closer. So if I were holding my knife crosswise and I pulled back, it would stop and I can't cut myself. Now, I'm not going to point it at myself. I'm going to put across myself like this. And I can cut towards, and that's all. So how do I hold the wood? I hold the wood this way. I hold the wood on the far end. And that way I can, the next thing is, instead of just a complete free arm movement, put your elbow against your side. And now you really have good control. You've locked your arm down, and you can pull as far as your elbow will let you, and you just can't reach yourself. Now, your hand has to be on the far end, and you're going to make that shaving, and you can make long ones, and you can get pretty good control and plenty of power. Remember, we often want a stroke that has power, but we also want one that has control. This is a great one. If this will suit what you're trying to take off, this one has both. It has power and control. So that's cutting towards yourself, but only if you've got these controllable things. You're crosswise on your body, your elbows clamped against your side, and you're holding the far end of the wood. Because obviously, if I hold this part and I cut towards myself, I will hit my thumb. I don't want that. Or my finger, or something. I'm only going to go towards myself if I've got this thing locked. Okay? So, lots of strength, good control. Because again, we're good at controlling what comes towards us. All right, what's next? Okay, batoning. And batoning is using another stick to hit the back of your knife in order to control it. Okay, let's see if we can aim. Okay, yeah. So I've got a solid block of wood here. I could do this on a stump. I could do this on a number of different pieces. And I have a solid chunk that's going to be like a hammer. It could be round, it could be square. I don't care. It's comfortable in my hand. It's small enough that I can hold it. But it's dense and heavy. Now, this is what you might want to do if you want to split a piece of wood, because sometimes you do. So you want to take your knife, and whenever you want to split a piece of wood, it always works best if you put it in the middle of the mass so that when you split it, you have two equal pieces. They could be different shapes as long as there's about the same amount of wood on each side. So here I go. I've got my knife on there, and I'm going to hit it. This is better than if I wanted to split a piece of wood and I tried to hold it up in the air and just push down with my knife. It's certainly better than taking a chopping tool and trying to whack the end of a piece of wood. So I can baton a pretty big piece of wood with a knife, if the knife is strong. Okay, see, that's splitting nicely. I can use it if I want to make a pair of tongs. I can use it if I'm making kindling of a certain size, if I'm making a pair of chopsticks, whatever it is I'm doing. If I need to split, I can split pretty big pieces with just a knife. Okay. Now, when you're done, when you get in there and you're hitting the knife, you hit the top of the knife first, but then you have to hit the part of the knife that's sticking out the end. I don't know if you can see that very well. See? So we're gonna bop that. Not all knives are strong enough to do this with. There we go. So now I have two pieces. You will always find it easier to cut shavings along a corner or a facet rather than on a flat area. If I try to do a flat area, I have to cut across the entire area. But if I do a little corner, I get these beautiful, skinny little shavings. I don't have to press very hard. I got really nice, I can do nice work. Okay. Okay. So batoning. The last stroke is shearing. See, remember I was saying that you could take these shavings and stick with the shavings on it and it'd help you light a fire? Well, what if you need even finer kindling and you don't have that? Well, again, we're going to use our anvil and we are going to shear or scrape. And we're going to put the knife straight across. We're not cutting downward into it. This is not it. It's exactly flat. And you just run it straight down. And look what I'm making. They're very light and fluffy and thin. And they are so thin that you could light them with a magnifying glass, with a bow drill, with a bow drill ember, a friction fire ember, with a spark from a ferro rod. So very, very, very good tinder. Even if you didn't have any sort of other tinder at all, you could make enough of this that you put an ember in it. You can make a bunch. I recommend a tinder bundle as big as a baseball at least, depending on where you are. In the desert, you might get away with something smaller, but I like a big tinder bundle. So yeah, so shearing is the last one. The only caution about shearing is it really does dull your knife. And the name of the game in doing good work safely is to have sharp tools, to know how to take care of them so that they will do what you need them to do. So that's the scope of another video or another tutorial. Knife sharpening. Just remember that it isn't even worth putting it in your pocket if it's not sharp. So be on the lookout for that information as well and learn how to sharpen. If you're going to use tools, make sure they're in really good working condition. They will be easier to use, safer to use. So that goes back to our topic, knife safety as well. So carve safely, think before you make any knife strokes at all. Before you move a knife against a piece of wood, stop and think and say, is this right? Is this going to do what I want it to do? And am I safe? So be safe, carve nice things, and enjoy yourself. Bye.